These coal mine workers are about to begin their shift along with 1,000 other workers at the Corrier's coal mine. They have followed the same routine for years, but only this time something horrible is about to happen. These are the three most gruesome cave mining disasters of all time. You're watching Disturbing Talks. Nestled amidst the rugged Pas-de-Calais mountains of France lies a tale of tragedy etched into the annals of history, the Corrier's colliery disaster of 1906. In the quiet depths of these mines, where coal veins run deep and hopes are buried beneath layers of earth, a devastating chain of events unfolded, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and loss. The Corrier's colliery, a complex network of mines sprawling beneath the surface, was a bustling hive of activity. More than 2,000 men and boys descended daily into the depths, their livelihoods tied to the extraction of coal, destined mostly for the manufacture of gas. But on the afternoon of March 9, 1906, the tranquil routine of life underground was shattered by an unseen menace, a spark that ignited a fire in the Cecil pit, 270 meters below the surface. As the clock struck 3 p.m., a faint flicker of flame danced upon the coal dust-laden air, igniting a fire that would consume not just coal, but lives. Panic ensued as workers scrambled to contain the inferno, but their efforts proved futile against the relentless advance of the flames. With each passing moment, the fire raged unchecked, its insatiable hunger devouring everything in its path. As night descended upon the Corrier's colliery, a grim decision was made: to seal the pit's outlets and starve the fire of oxygen. It was a desperate measure born of necessity, a last-ditch attempt to quell the inferno raging below. Little did they know, this decision would seal the fate of those trapped within, condemning them to a fate worse than death. The following morning dawned with an eerie stillness, the air heavy with anticipation of the impending catastrophe. At 7 a.m., as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the earth itself convulsed with a deafening roar. A massive explosion, born from the depths of the Cecil pit, tore through the tunnels with unfathomable force, ripping through steel and stone as if they were mere paper. Debris rocketed out of the tunnel's openings with deadly precision, claiming lives with merciless efficiency. Above ground, chaos reigned as the magnitude of the disaster became apparent. The ground shook violently, as if the very foundations of the earth were being torn asunder, while the acrid scent of burning coal filled the air. Fires raged uncontrollably from every opening of the mine, their flames casting long, eerie shadows against the desolate landscape. The once tranquil surroundings were transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror as families awaited news of their loved ones with bated breath. But the horror had only just begun. As brave rescuers descended into the abyss in a desperate bid to save the trapped miners, they were met with a cruel fate of their own. The earth, enraged by the intrusion, lashed out with merciless fury, claiming the lives of those who dared to challenge its darkness. Days turned into weeks as the grim task of recovery unfolded. A makeshift mortuary, a somber testament to the scale of the tragedy, was established near the mine, where the bodies of the fallen were laid to rest. Each life lost, a poignant reminder of the fragility of existence and the harsh realities of life in the mines. In the end, the toll of the disaster was staggering. 1,060 miners perished, their hopes and dreams extinguished in an instant. Hundreds more suffered severe injuries, their lives forever altered by the events that unfolded on that fateful day. The Banksy colliery disaster of 1942 was a tragedy shrouded in darkness and mystery, its origins rooted in a web of neglect, incompetence, and greed. At the heart of the catastrophe lay a series of fatal errors and oversights that would ultimately seal the fate of 1,549 souls who ventured into the depths of the mine that fateful day. In the months leading up to the disaster, whispers of discontent had echoed through the mine, a silent warning of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface. But these warnings fell on deaf ears as the powers that be turned a blind eye to the mounting signs of trouble, driven by a relentless pursuit of profit at any cost. One of the primary factors that contributed to the tragedy was the buildup of coal dust within the mine, a ticking time bomb waiting to be ignited by the slightest spark. In the days leading up to the explosion, miners had reported seeing clouds of dust billowing through the tunnels, a sinister harbinger of the doom that awaited them. But despite these ominous signs, little was done to address the issue, as management prioritized productivity over safety, a decision that would have devastating consequences. And so, as the dust continued to accumulate, the stage was set for a catastrophe of unprecedented scale. On the morning of April 26, 1942, as the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, a spark from a piece of machinery ignited the volatile mixture of coal dust that hung in the air like a shroud. In an instant, the mine was engulfed in flames, unleashing a wave of destruction that tore through the tunnels with relentless fury. The force of the explosion was so powerful that it shattered the very foundations of the mine, causing walls to collapse and tunnels to cave in, trapping miners deep underground. Those who were fortunate enough to survive the initial blast found themselves stranded amidst the rubble, their only hope of escape resting on the shoulders of the brave souls who ventured into the heart of the inferno to rescue them. But as the rescue effort unfolded, it quickly became apparent that the mine was a death trap, a treacherous labyrinth of darkness and despair where every step could be their last. The air was thick with smoke and ash, making it difficult to breathe, while the heat from the flames threatened to consume them whole. Despite the overwhelming odds, the rescuers pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and desperation to save their comrades. Inch by inch, they battled against the inferno, their courage unyielding in the face of unimaginable horror. But for many, their efforts would prove futile as the flames claimed them one by one, leaving behind nothing but charred remains and broken dreams. In the days that followed, the full extent of the tragedy became painfully clear as the bodies of the fallen were pulled from the wreckage, a grim reminder of the cost of neglect and indifference. Families were torn apart, communities were shattered, and a nation mourned the loss of so many lives cut short by greed and incompetence. In the aftermath of the disaster, investigations were launched to determine the cause of the explosion and to hold those responsible to account. It was revealed that the mine had been plagued by a litany of safety violations, including inadequate ventilation, poor maintenance, and a lack of proper training for the miners, a damning indictment of the reckless disregard for human life that had led to such devastation. But even as the finger of blame was pointed, the scars of the Banksy colliery disaster would never fully heal, serving as a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface. In the early hours of a bitter February morning, the pit Lesenthal, nestled amidst the rolling hills of Saarland, lay shrouded in an eerie stillness. a silence broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional echo of footsteps treading the worn paths of its surface. Within its depths, where the darkness held sway and the air hung heavy with the scent of coal and sweat, lay the promise of untold riches and unimaginable danger, a treacherous labyrinth of tunnels and shafts that stretched for miles beneath the Earth's surface. It was 7:45 when the first tremors of what would soon become a cataclysmic event reverberated through the Allsbachschacht, one of the 4 rope journey shafts that formed the lifeline of the pit. To those on the surface, the noise was little more than a vague bang, a distant rumble that stirred the air with a sense of foreboding. But deep within the bowels of the earth, where the miners toiled in darkness, it was the harbinger of a tragedy that would shake the very foundations of Saarland's coal mining industry. With a force beyond comprehension, a detonation ripped through the Allsbachschacht, tearing through the darkness like a bolt of lightning. The shaft lid, torn from its moorings by the sheer force of the explosion, soared into the air before becoming ensnared in the scaffolding that surrounded the pit, a grim testament to the violence that had erupted below. A black cloud of smoke billowed from the Allsbachschacht, casting a pall over the conveyor tower, a dark memorial to the lives lost in an instant of unchecked fury. A local resident, drawn by the commotion, spread like wildfire, managed to capture the main rescue center in Friedrichsthal, and the only known photograph were immediately alerted, setting into motion a frantic race for generations to save those trapped below. Sirens wailed, ambulances raced through the streets, and the thrum of helicopter rotors filled the air, a cacophony of chaos that echoed across the landscape, a symphony of despair that played out against the backdrop of tragedy. At the pit gate, a crowd gathered, a sea of anxious faces, each one filled with dread and anticipation. Among them were the families of the 998 miners who had descended into the depths of Lesenthal that fateful morning, their hearts heavy with fear for the safety of their loved ones. Of those miners, 664 were in the Allsbach field, and 433 found themselves in the vicinity of the explosion, a staggering number, each one a potential victim of the disaster that had unfolded. As the hours passed, hope dwindled with each passing minute, replaced by a grim acceptance of the inevitable. By midday, only 73 miners had been rescued alive, their bodies battered and broken by the force of the explosion. 61 returned unscathed, their survival a miracle amidst the devastation. But for the rest, there would be no reprieve, no chance to see the light of day again. The true extent of the disaster became clear with each passing hour as the death toll continued to climb. What had initially been thought to be a tragedy claiming the lives of 11 miners soon revealed itself to be far worse. 287 men, lost to the darkness of the earth, their names etched into the annals of history as victims of a catastrophe beyond comprehension. On February 7th, a methane explosion ripped through the Allsbach field, triggering an even larger coal dust explosion with devastating consequences. Of the 433 miners present, 299 would never emerge from the depths, their bodies entombed in the very coal they had toiled to extract. In the days that followed, the grim task of identifying the dead began, a somber procession of names and faces, each one a painful reminder of the lives lost in the blink of an eye. For the families left behind, the agony of waiting was almost unbearable, as they clung to the hope that their loved ones would be among the lucky few to emerge unscathed. But as the days turned into weeks, and the last of the missing were brought to the surface, some alive, but many more not, the reality of the disaster became impossible to ignore. 299 dead, ranging in age from 17 to 59, their lives cut short by the merciless hand of fate. 73 others left to mourn the loss of their comrades, their bodies scarred by the physical and emotional toll of the ordeal. And so, as the dust settled and the world moved on, the memory of the Lucenthal Pit disaster remained, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the dangers that lurked beneath the surface, waiting to claim those who dared to venture into the darkness. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel as it takes significant time and effort to produce these videos. I'll see you in the next one.